On the day that Loretta turned 18, there was something seriously wrong with her. She was still playing with dolls. Yes, she was an adult. She should know better. But she simply could not help herself. She was playing with them 24/7. Combing, curling, and cutting her doll's hair in the morning, holding tea gathering and fancy dress parties with them till sunset, and sleeping with the male ones at night. She had spent the entire last 3 months on the playground, months in which she hadn't encountered a single person other than these inanimate objects that were, and had the purpose to be, merely actual persons in her imagination. Did she like it? Living her life in complete solitude? Missing her loved ones and friends? Because although the dolls took on the semblance of the people she loved most, she knew deep down that they were not. Dolls didn't have a consciousness. Even a child of 2 was aware of this. They might still enjoy playing with them all alone, after all. But she didn't. She despised it. She hated to be deceived in any way, for however pleasing, and sycophantic, and sympathetic these dolls were. But even though she despised playing with them, she couldn't stop. These dolls were scattered everywhere, and simply would not leave her alone. There was nothing to be done about this, it seemed to her, however much she may have wished. And sometimes she did indeed try to get rid of them. But when she put away her dolls in big cupboards or chests, they would immediately pull themselves out. Even if she put a lock on it, and for a moment she could breathe a sigh of unmonitored relief, she would soon hear the sounds of loud knocking and screeching. She was not delusional. No, don't for a second think that. They could actually do that. They were automata, you see, wind-up toys, with a sound instrument right down in their throat. She, of course, didn't wind her dolls up to begin with. She would never do that, and she didn't have a clue who else did, if anyone. It must have been a really complex mechanism that they possessed, for they always acted according to circumstances. If she asked a thing, they would always be prompt to give a fitting reply. But thinking this necessarily meant it acted on the circumstances was stupid and naive, something a skeptic like Loretta didn't really appreciate. It could just as well be the case that the dolls were only able of doing one movement repetitively, just with a very long time span, and the fact that this fitted circumstances perfectly was merely a complete coincidence. But from all the things that were uncertain to her, one thing she did know. These dolls didn't have an infinite lifespan. Life here is an unfortunate word. And if she kept them captive for a couple of days, they would eventually run out and remain silent forever. Why was she certain of this? Well, because these dolls had the very function to be indiscernible from something that did remain permanently silenced, if not nourished for a couple of days. You see, if she kept her dolls captive in, let's say, a chest for a day or 6, the police dolls would seize her and put their toy handcuffs on her and throw her in a makeshift cell. They could do that. These dolls had her size and her strength, and would in that regard be more like Bambochades, the toy her father used to give to her when she was little. Whichever way you looked at it, these dolls were indistinguishable from human beings. You might think she was merely complaining about her own life, and that this set of circumstances was completely unique to her. That these life-size dolls, these Bambochades, were only torturing her with their deceptive world of make-believe. That she was the only one to live in isolation like that. But nothing was further from the truth. Everyone was living their lives in complete solitude, segregated from their fellow living friends, family, and acquaintances. Everybody was completely separated from each other, and he or she who would deny this certainty only proved that he or she was playing with dolls. Loretta, different from the others in this small but significant regard. She alone was mature enough to be aware of it, while others still believed in this imaginative world. These Bambochades did not only try to deceive her into thinking they were actual people, they were also the very perpetrators that separated her from all their acquaintances, her friends, her family, and everyone she loved. The Bambochades didn't do it by force, but indirectly through gaining their attention. They only had to seduce one of her friends, and she would never see that friend again. A Bamboche could easily seduce one of her homegirls, having a vast advantage over real boys, since such a seducer was explicitly designed to fulfill the girl's highest standards. Time the girl could spend with her actual friends, she would waste with this Bamboche boy and his entire family. If she fell down this path, she could never in her life find her way out. If she decided to go back, she would only have the illusion of coming back to her house and seeing her friends and parents again, but they wouldn't actually be there, not them. They were Bambochades that appeared exactly like their friends, and the girl could never discern them from her real friends, never. From there on, her entire life would just become a performance, a complete Bambochade. See, she didn't behave like a little child when she was scared to sleep alone in her own bed and had to seek refuge with her parents at night. She had to lag over them, because if she lost sight of them, they would be one way or another replaced by Bambochades too. You will surely think, what evil, sick desires drove these Bambochades to do this to people, to take away all their loved ones, and to then deceive them into thinking this was not the case? What sick pleasure did they get from this? The strange truth is that the Bambochades did this entirely and altogether for altruistic reasons. Their purpose was to create a better world. By removing their real friends and relatives, they were removing everything that was messy and flawed, whereas the lifeless doubles would bend to their every wish and behave with the ideals in their mind. What satisfied her? If Loretta could answer this question, she could find out the thing the Bambochades would try to swap and change in her life. This was hard to answer, even for herself. But one thing she did know. The thing that satisfied her was the thing she found to be desirable. If she didn't find something desirable, it would most definitely not satisfy her. And if something didn't satisfy her, she most definitely wouldn't find it desirable. For everything to be satisfactory to someone, it had to be desirable to him. And this was a much greater problem than it may initially seem. Because if something was less desirable than something else, and only one of the two things could exist simultaneously, and out of the two only the less desirable thing existed, there was necessarily something which was not desirable. The less desirable thing's difference with the more desirable thing. So for everything to be desirable, the most desirable thing had to exist. What was the most desirable thing? It was different for everyone, which would later become the central problem. But there was one thing that could be said for all. That what someone desired the most was someone's ideal world. Because if besides the most desirable thing there could have been something which was desirable additionally, then the combination of the most desirable thing and the additional thing would have been the most desirable thing. Therefore, the most desirable thing couldn't have a desirable addition. And as such, the most desirable thing was the most desirable world of all other possible worlds. One's ideal world. And that was the very problem. Everyone's ideal world was different, and it was therefore impossible to fulfill the ideal world of two persons, let alone that of everybody. Meaning that in one person's perfect world, there was always something undesirable for everyone else. And if someone came to be aware of this undesirable thing, this would dissatisfy that person. A person cannot be aware of everything, however, merely those things that they can directly perceive. But there was no way of fathoming another's thoughts, or even if that other person was even real. And this was the part where the Bambochades came in. A husband and wife with a firm marriage could have had nearly the exact same ideal world, but if the wife wanted the trimming of the bedroom's curtains to be pink, while the man preferred baby blue, their ideal world would still contradict each other, and the Bambochades would immediately come after them, separating them both into obscurity. Even if they cared very little about this subject of infinitely diminutive importance, they still cared, and if they lived together, at least one of them would come to be aware of something undesirable. You see, in experience, Bambochades didn't differ from actual people. They could give as much joy to you as actual people could, but unlike actual people, they were not conscious, and as such did not have any thoughts, desires, and no ideal world that contradicted yours. Both wife and husband would eventually live separately in complete bamboches. They would both sleep next to a bamboche that looked like the other, and just before closing their eyes and falling asleep, see the only difference in their two different worlds. The trimmings color. Wasn't that terrible? This involuntary trade-off, where all your loved ones were separated from you forever, and you would not even realize.